Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this first session of PG Information Week. So in today's session, we're going to hear from Maggie from Admissions, who's going to talk about how to apply for a postgraduate course. And then we're also going to hear from Maria from Student Life, who's going to talk about postgraduate student finance. So I'll now pass over to Maggie.
Good afternoon, everybody. So first things first, which course are you going to study? If we can have that next slide, please. So here at the University of Suffolk, we offer a wide range of courses, many of which can be studied either full-time or part-time. Obviously, entry requirements are specific to each course, so please refer to the course page on the website to ensure that you meet the requirements for the particular course that you're interested in studying. In some cases, the course team will consider an application from somebody who has professional experience in lieu of qualifications, or applications that demonstrate a particular aptitude for the subject. Course teams are always really happy to have an informal conversation from prospective students prior to you making a formal application. The contact details for the course team are generally available on the course page, but where they're not, or if you have any more general questions before you submit an application, you can always contact the admissions team and we can facilitate those answers for you. So once you've decided what you want to study, how do you apply? If we can have the next slide, please. Once you've decided what you're going to study, you can apply directly to the university using our direct application form. The link to this form can be found on each postgraduate course page. Applications usually open 1 year in advance, so either from September or January, depending on the intake. So obviously all courses are available for applications now. And whilst you can apply really close to the start date, we would strongly recommend that you apply as soon as possible, just to give yourself plenty of time to make sure that you can make any necessary preparations or get certificates if we require them, or anything else that needs to happen before we can facilitate your offer. The application form includes questions about education and employment history, as well as a personal statement and details of a referee or referees as appropriate. Some things to remember when you're making your application: make sure that you have your qualification certificates and transcripts, and upload these where possible when you make your application. Where we do not have evidence of your previous qualifications, your offer to study is likely to be made condition of receiving those certificates. So if you have them and can upload them in the first instance, that will just save a little bit of time and backwards and forwards. Some courses also require a CV, so please ensure that you provide one which gives us a really comprehensive work history, as the course teams will often use this to help make a decision on your application. So just dates and job title wouldn't be sufficient. We'd need to know what your duties were in each of the roles that you've undertaken. In terms of your personal statement, this should outline your motivation to study the course, the reasons that you are applying to the University of Suffolk as opposed to another university, and if appropriate, how studying this course will support your future career plans. That's more relevant for some courses than others. If you are applying to study a postgraduate course soon after you have graduated, so if anybody is currently still completing their undergraduate course, your reference should come from your course tutor or your course lead. We can also accept references from employers, line managers, or someone who's known you in an official capacity, such as a leader of a voluntary organisation or a faith leader. References are sometimes more difficult for people who've been out of education for a long time. So again, if you have any problems obtaining a referee, again, give the admissions team a call and we'll be able to give you some more guidance and some more help. Applications for professional courses, so our professional health courses, adult nursing and diagnostic radiography, and then also social work and cognitive behavioural therapy, will require 2 references. We should receive those references direct to the admissions team, so you can't send those on behalf of your referee. They will need to come direct from a professional email address to us. But if you need a reference form to send to your referee, we can supply that for you. So moving on to the direct application form itself. Just a little word of warning, the form is quite temperamental, to say the least. So don't try to apply from your mobile phone. Please use a PC or a laptop, and our recommendation is that you should use Google Chrome if at all possible. Your application should be completed in one sitting. You shouldn't leave and return to your application. The form will indicate that you can do this, but experience suggests that that's really not a good idea. So try and do your application all in one go if at all possible. If you've applied to us before, then you won't be able to use your previous username and password. So each application is a one-time login. So we would recommend making your login as unique as possible. And once the application is submitted, you won't need to remember that, as you will be assigned a new University of Suffolk specific username and login. If there are fields that you feel are not relevant to your application, but they are listed as mandatory, you shouldn't skip those fields. Please just make sure that you insert an NA, which should allow you to continue to process onto the next page. Also, in terms of your personal statement, because the form will time out after a certain length of time, it's worth having your personal statement pre-written, so you can just log it, add it to the application form as you go through the application process. That also allows you to think and edit and make sure that you're perfectly happy with your personal statement before you load it to your application form. When your application has submitted successfully, you will receive an acknowledgement email. As I said before, this will include your username, and you should quote that whenever you contact the admissions team. That will help us to find your application quickly. If for any reason you don't receive that acknowledgement email, again, it's worth just giving us a call to make sure that your application has submitted successfully. So once we've received it, I'll just talk you through the application process itself. So this will depend on your chosen course of study. We may require some additional information from you, or we may invite you to interview with the course team. In certain circumstances, as I said before, if you potentially don't meet the academic entry requirements, but you feel that you have relevant experience, we will then refer that application over to the course team for them to make an academic decision before we process any offer. Again, as I said, course teams are really happy to have informal conversations. So if we get to this point, it might be that we refer the application over to the course team and they might give you a quick call or drop you an email just to clarify any points before they make a recommendation. If your chosen course does require an interview, we'll send you an invitation outlining all of the details and recommending whatever the appropriate preparation is. So we often will include reading lists within that interview invitation. We aim to process all applications in a timely manner. We appreciate that postgraduate study is an important and potentially expensive decision, so we want to get your applications processed as quickly as we can. But just to remind you that each application is really individual and will be managed accordingly. So please ensure that any requests for additional information are responded to promptly to avoid any delay in processing that decision for you. Once we have a decision, you will receive it via email. It will be the email that you provide on your direct application form. So please make sure that you don't change that or lose it, because then you won't receive any further correspondence from us. And that, in a nutshell, is how to apply for postgraduate study.
Thank you, Maggie. If anyone does have any questions about the admissions process or anything about their specific application, they can contact the University of Suffolk admissions team at admissions@uos.ac.uk, and then the admissions team will get back to you about your specific case as well. But thank you, Maggie. I'll now pass over to Maria from the Student Life team, who's going to talk us through postgraduate student finance.
Hello, everyone. So just to follow on Maggie from the admission side of things, this talk will just be about what funding there would be available for postgraduate funding at the University of Suffolk. Okay. So most of our University of Suffolk students who do postgraduate courses at the University of Suffolk access their funding via Student Finance England. So this talk is primarily for those that will be eligible for funding from Student Finance England, and for postgraduate funding there would be two, we call different pots of money, so to speak. So you've got your postgraduate master's loan to do postgraduate courses, and you've got the postgraduate doctoral loan for PhD courses. So there's sort of two different routes into postgraduate funding. Okay. So at the moment, Student Finance England haven't released any figures for what the amounts will be for both those loans for September 2026 onwards. So at the moment we can only give you what the figures are for this academic year, and you can see that postgraduate master's loan currently is at £12,858, and then for the postdoctoral loan would be 30,301. So each academic year that would slightly change, and in previous years this has just always gone up. So just to keep a lookout for that, those figures will be changing. At the moment we don't have an idea of when those figures will be published, but I'd advise just to follow Student Finance England on their social media. You can then sign up to their newsletter and be informed of when that would be available, and later on in the talk I'll let you know when applications normally then go live, but they should release their figures prior to when the application process starts. Okay. So eligibility is really, again, going back to your course, what type of course it is, your age, your nationality or residency status. So with the course itself, most of our courses on our website, as long as they're not sort of CPD courses, things like that, then you would be eligible for funding. There are some exceptions where, like teacher training courses, things like that, where you'll be applying as a different route, so to speak. So if anyone on listening in today, if they are thinking about teacher training courses, then again, just look at Student Finance England for the route that you would apply for that. For age, there is an upper limit for postgraduate funding, so it will be 60. You have to be under the age of 60 on the first day of the course. So just to bear that in mind, if we have anyone who's sort of thinking at the their retirement age, that kind of thing, then that would be a limit on age. And again, with like most things, nationality and residency. The main criteria is to be in the UK and no breaks in travelling for permanent living outside of those 3 years. So you have to be as a resident of the UK for 3 years prior to the course starting. There are some exceptions if you're an EU national, and there's EU settlement schemes, things like that. So if anyone is going to is sort of got a query on their residency, would say obviously to contact Student Finance directly to just discuss whether you'd be eligible. So yeah, just to make sure that you're eligible before applying, that you'd be able to absolutely contact them yourselves on that. With funding as well, if you've already got a postgraduate degree, you then couldn't qualify for funding again, even if you didn't have funding when you did your previous postgraduate degree. So there are lots of sort of regulations on whether you've studied before, and again with doctoral loan as well. So if you've already done any sort of, even if you haven't finished, it's always worth checking with Student Finance England directly before you make any application for postgraduate study. If you've already achieved study to that level, even if you haven't had funding before, or even if you have, it's best to just check that out, because there are some rules of obviously whether they can help with funding going forward. So always check on that. With the funding that you get from Student Finance England for postgraduate study, it's not based for household income like it was for undergraduate students. So the figure that you see is what's available for everyone if they're eligible. There are some exceptions for our postgraduate courses, whether they qualify for the postgraduate loan or not. So as I said, teacher training, I've already mentioned that that they have a different pathway for that. But we also have 2 courses at the University of Suffolk who would actually qualify for undergraduate funding, even though they're a master's courses. So those 2 exceptions I've listed there. So it's the pre-registration Masters in Diagnostic Radiography and the pre-registration Masters in Adult Nursing. Because they're pre-registration healthcare courses, there's much more funding available via undergraduate funding pathway, which is why that's the route that you take, basically, because there's also funding via the NHS Learning Support Fund as well. So those courses, for those 2 courses directly, I've listed the tuition fee there for both of those courses as it is for 25-26. And you'll note that the tuition fee loan is the maximum you can get for undergraduate funding is 9,535 per year. So you can see that there is a shortfall in that those amounts. So although you're getting the tuition fee just lower, you could obviously pay out your the difference to the university from your maintenance loan. But with the undergraduate pathway, there's so much more available for students on those courses, because you'll be able to apply for the grants, childcare grant, adult dependent grant. So there is a lot more funding available to your individual circumstances. And then with the NHS Learning Support Fund, you get the training grant of £5,000 per year. And if you're a parent, you get an extra £2,000 as well. And there's also travel, accommodation expenses that you can claim back through there. So hopefully, you can see that you're gonna. That's why the undergraduate route is offered for those 2 courses, because there is much more available to them. Okay, so applying. Let me just think. Yeah, so applying for those courses, as I said, applications probably won't go live until about May time. So we're hoping at some point before then is when you'll be able to see what the figures are. So what, potentially what would be available for you. So I've put the government website address on there, because that's where you'll be applying to. So apply online at gov.uk/apply student finance, and it's there is a deadline on applying for funding, so it's 9 months from the start of the course. So really, you don't want to be sort of leaving it too late in making an application, but obviously we'd always say apply plenty of time before the course starts, and with that's usually student finance, say 6 weeks is when an application from start to finish, unless they need anything additional, is the usual sorts of time. We have known some PhD students applying retrospectively, so maybe not on the year that they started the course, because obviously that can be longer in duration than our postgraduate courses. And so the Student Finance England do say that there is flexibility on that. You'll always get the figure of the amount what was available at the time of your course starting, and as long as you've got 9 months before the end of the course, to make sure that you've got that still to go before they look at applications. So it's just something to note on there as well. So repayment, interest is charged from the day you receive the first instalment from Student Finance England, and they charge the RPI rate plus 0%. It's like undergraduate funding. You start repaying the April after you graduate. So if you leave or finish the course, it's always the April afterwards. So even if you withdraw from the course early, that kind of thing, and the repayment earnings is less than undergraduate. It's 21,000 you have to be earning, and then you'll start to repay 6% of anything you earn above that. So that's how that works. So if you're not earning 21,000, obviously you won't be paying anything. So that's the threshold, 21,000. And as with undergraduate loans, your loan is wiped out or written off after 30 years if it's not paid. So that's the same as undergraduate funding as well. So additional support at the University of Suffolk. So this is just what's in addition to the postgraduate funding. We have a financial support fund at the university, and that's open to undergraduate and our postgraduate students. So if anyone's experiencing hardship, we're able to and they're able to demonstrate that through an application, and to sort of provide that evidence, we can have a look and see if we're able to support with an award. With postgraduate students, it is assessed differently to undergraduate students. Postgraduate students, because it's a professional course, that there is different regulations of how we can support, but obviously we'd always be able to look at everyone's application on an individual basis. So just it is there for every student to apply for. So students with a disability can also apply to have a reimbursement of £200, so anything for if their equipment, anything like that, through the Disabled Students Allowance. And there's also funding available to support them with whatever equipment, extra support they need. So it's not money directly to the student, but it's money that is then put aside from the Disabled Students Allowance to support with the student and their studies. So it's whether it's equipment, it could be a range of different things. So if anyone would think that they would qualify for Disabled Students Allowance, we do have our Disability and Wellbeing team here at the University of Suffolk too, so that they could always support with any questions surrounding what the eligibility is for funding on that as well. We also have the alumni postgraduate discount. So if students have already studied their undergraduate course at the University of Suffolk, then they'll be able to apply for a discount on the tuition fees, and currently that's at 25% discount. So that's something that admissions would be able to, once they receive an application, they would be able to assess to see whether they'd be eligible, and obviously update our finance department accordingly. So yeah, that's how that works as well. There's also, before I get to sort of any question, there's also external funding that for our PhD students and for postgraduate students that you could possibly apply for. So these are external support, and I would say a really good website to have a look at for additional external support is Prospect's website. So they will list any scholarships that are available, any charities, grants, any funding that that you know they'll list it all on there. So it's definitely worth to have a look on there. I've supported many students with getting some additional funding via charities, that kind of thing. So that's a really good website to access, to sort of see what the availability is at the time. We do list some on our website, but the main ones I've listed on the screen at the moment is the sort of the main websites to have a look at. So you've got obviously the government website. I've listed our University of Suffolk. We try to collate and put everything in there as well. So it's just to sort of keep an eye on our website, on the government website, to see when any updates are, things like that. And that's where you'll be obviously making your application through the government website. If there are any questions and nobody wants to sort of raise on our talk today, please do feel free to email moneyadvice@uos.ac.uk, and we'll be more than happy to help. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Maggie, for talking us through the application process as well. As I was saying before, if you have any other questions about the application process or about Money Advice, you can contact that email address here for Money Advice, moneyadvice@uos.ac.uk, or you can contact the admissions team by going to admissions@uos.ac.uk as well, and a member of the team will get back to you. So thank you both for your presentations, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.